Welcome aboard, crew. We've discussed some future possibilities with terraforming other planets, worlds, space travel, future weaponry. But what will Earth itself look like in about 4 to 500 years? Will humans wipe themselves out? Probably. But I'm trying to be optimistic here, okay? I'm going to look at some trends like population growth, decline, technological growth, future dangers, environmental changes, and try and make a prediction on what this will look like. This will be very similar to speculative fiction, as I'm going to be looking ahead and saying, okay, what is possible? Although I'm way more likely to be wrong because this is 400 years, not just like a decade or two. So let's establish the setting. Let's start with sea levels. They are expected to rise at some point. I don't necessarily agree with the amount that they've been saying it's going to rise by, but some projections have it as high as 30 feet. Even if it's only half that amount, that's still going to be a pretty big problem for coastal cities. Regardless, there is a solution for this. So sea levels rise due to ice caps or glaciers melting. Now, in the Swiss Alps, researchers have been using snow machines to cover glaciers in this artificial snow mix, preserving the ice through the summer and potentially allowing glaciers to grow back over decades. So it just keeps them cool. You have things like seawater pumping. You have startups like Real Ice and Arctic Reflections. Basically, they're conducting field trials right now where drones will drill through the ice to pump seawater onto the surface, where it refreezes and thickens the ice sheet and creates a durable artificial ice. Again, just keeping it from melting as easily. Last but not least, you have marine cloud brightening. We have hundreds of ships to spray seawater mist, creating salt crystals that brighten clouds and basically reflect the sunlight to make it so it's not as warm. It's like having like a sunscreen or sun shield on your car's window shield, right? And this will protect the Greenland's ice shelves. We would have to brighten an awful lot of clouds for this to be possible, but these methods could all be used in conjunction with each other. It's not like we just have to use one or the other. If you believe these methods are too risky because you don't want to mess with the environment, like artificially changing it may be a bad idea, there are other solutions as well. So, one strategy is to counter sea level rise rather than trying to prevent the glaciers from melting themselves. Even though I do think you can do both. But one method is to build seawalls or dikes, possibly artificial islands, which do exist in real life, to raise elevations above sea level. But even these engineered solutions require careful consideration for wave driven flooding and degradation from natural sediment processes. So there's a lot more to worry about there. My point is that I don't think humans would just let cities flood without doing anything. The next major problem I was able to find is desertification, and that is the spreading of dry areas with little to no rainfall. It doesn't necessarily mean a sandy or hot region. So Antarctica is the largest desert in the entire world, right? It's not a desert in a traditional sense of sand. Anywho, these areas have been spreading across the world and will affect crop yields and fruit productions. We're projected to have 3% more of the world's humid areas become drylands by the year 2100, with no regions expected to become more humid. 5 billion people potentially in the dry area, and you have like food scarcity. And we see that crop yields will decline by 50% by 2050. So let's tackle some solutions to this problem because I was able to find some. One is agroforestry, and that's integrating trees into crop systems. There's also crop rotation and intercropping, which enhance the soil's nutrients and help retain moisture. So there's no-till farming and cover cropping. These are critical for maintaining the soil structure and preventing erosion. And rotational grazing, which basically relieves the pressure of livestock eating grass and actually allows plants to grow back. So you have rainwater harvesting as well. It collects water during rainy seasons for use during dry spells, adding organic matter, compost, or manure to boost the water holding capacity of the underlying soil. Then we have projects like the Great Green Wall of Africa, which represents the world's largest ecosystem restoration project, trying to restore hundreds of millions of acres across the Sahel region, which is like a region in Africa, by 2030. As of 2026, they have somewhere between 30 and 35 million acres or hectares. We assume in 400 years that a lot of these solutions will be tried and some will be successful and they'll find better solutions. I'm pretty sure China also has some kind of green wall they're trying to grow as well. So let's see the other problems. We have water shortages in several places. around the world, including the US, they have the Ogallala, I believe it's pronounced aquifer, which is just a reservoir of water underground. And it's supposed to be dry somewhere between 2040 and 2050. And we have 20% of the US's irrigated land supplies drinking water to millions of people, supporting a major agricultural region. The depletion had began in 1940, and the research I was able to find, again, roughly somewhere between 2040 and 2050. But outside of that, by 2050 as well, we'll have global water scarcity projected to intensify significantly, with 5 billion people expected to have shortages for at least a month. The primary driving reasons is decreasing precipitation in dry regions, rising temperatures that increase evaporation, and over extraction of groundwater, or the aquifers, as I mentioned before. Now, we did cover desertification, whatever. There's recycling water and even pumping water back into the ground in order to prevent aquifers from drying up. There's also desalination plants, which I've mentioned before in my videos. It's basically taking salt water or ocean water, removing the salt and other minerals, and making it potable or drinkable. And those are the solutions I was able to find. I'm sure more will arise in the future. On to our next major problem, and that's population decline. Now, we still do have like almost 8 billion people, but it is trending downward for multiple nations, including in the Western nations as well. So what is the solution to this? Well, there is a recession affecting most of the world's economy. People tend to not have children. The global population is projected to peak in 2080 with approximately 10.3 billion people. UN estimates 80% probability that the population will peak within the next century. So by 2060 through 2100, we're expected to not go up really anymore. It'll level out and start declining before not too long. But basically, what you have to do is just compensate people more for having kids, because right now, if things are too expensive and people don't want to raise kids when the morale is low, they'll just bring kids up in like a dark environment or a hopeless world. So, trying to improve their outlook, trying to instill more family values at a younger age. Not that they have to have kids, but I could see some countries trying to force people to have kids. Maybe the more authoritarian ones. I definitely don't agree with that solution, but I can see countries trying to do that, unless they try and grow people in a lab or something, or maybe they just start cloning people. That's not a real suggestion, by the way. Just start cloning the world's population instead of having people actually have kids. A terrible idea. But yeah, like I said, I think you do have to get away from the narcissism and the me culture as well. Actually, having people look to the future and be more optimistic and care about the greater group, not just themselves. There's not a whole lot of solutions. I admit I'm kind of stumped on this particular problem. The next major problem that I'm sure some of you have heard of is the magnetic field reversing. So the magnetic field around Earth, it will reverse occasionally throughout history. And during that time period, Earth is vulnerable to solar flares, solar storms, which can come from the sun and wipe out satellites, shut down power. And basically, it's not so good for us. So, what can we do about this? Well, we have discussed making artificial magnetic fields around planets and moons before. So, why can't we do the same to Earth? Basically, having some kind of magnetic field generator, having to invent one at some point in the next decade or so, placing at the L1 point, or the Lagrange point. I always forgot how to say that word, but basically, you create a magnetic field around Earth, an artificial one, just so while it flips, you can have one in place, and you just keep one there just in case. It can't hurt to have more than one. And potentially, if we have the moon colonized, that it'll need one as well. If it's not enveloped in Earth at 24/7, if it gets out of that at any point, as the moon is getting further away from Earth as time goes on. So I'm sure we could put one around there. The other solution to the magnetic field reversal is just make our technology more resistant to being shut off by EMPs and installing more Faraday cages. We actually already have satellites that are somewhat resistant to big solar flares, so I don't think it'll totally be over. If anything, we could have you have to be careful with magnetic fields and electromagnetic fields around people, because it can cause ill health effects. So I don't want to just have them all over the place, but you can make like a giant bubble just in Earth's atmosphere. If the having it out in space is not achievable within a certain amount of time. But let's move on to our next topic, which is not going to be discussing crises or problems, but some future technologies. So, as I alluded to in the beginning of the video, I do think some future technology can fix some of these problems that are going to come up, especially if we end up leaving Earth or going out to other planets with even more resources, right? So, some of the like water shortages, to some extent, desertification, if we take the water, transport it back, pump it underground, right? So, some of that can be fixed. And I think if humans are giving more hope, hey, there's other planets out there to explore, kind of giving them purpose beyond just, hey, the world's hopeless. Don't have kids, or they won't feel like having kids at least. People living on Earth won't feel like having kids. So I do think that space exploration can give people the next frontier to go explore, give them hope for the future. So might inadvertently help. But while I'm at it, anything from CO2 to O2 converters may eventually come to pass to potentially offset the amount of pollution that's been happening on Earth. Placing reflective mirrors in orbit to cover up the glaciers and put them in like a shade spot and prevent them from being too warm. Some people are against any kind of artificial adjustments to Earth, so they'll think that it'll make nature, they'll like make nature go imbalanced, tip it off of its natural setting, which I guess I kind of get. You don't want to mess around with nature too much, but that is a solution to the glacial melting problem. I do think in the future, as I said earlier, that humans will have some kind of permanent settlement on the moon, whether that be a space base purely for refueling rockets and just having ships be able to take off easier because the gravity is lower, or a full-fledged colony that's just there or just there to mine resources to the moon like helium-3, melt the ice on the moon for water to relieve that water shortage issue. I did make an entire video on this, so I will put it up on screen or just show the video in the description somewhere. But I do think that it's possible that will happen. I also see the asteroid industry, the asteroid mining industry really taking off, as you'll be able to mine a ton of resources from asteroids, but virtually unlimited because there's a ton of them in the asteroid belt. We have other moons that have water on them, Mars's moons. I also think we'll be living on another planet besides Earth or the moon. It could be potentially Mars or Venus, or even a Ornell cylinder or some kind of artificial habitation that's just floating out like a floating ring out in the middle of space. Some kind of area to live in there, if not just for rich people. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe space tourism will also become a thing. We have some people going to space, but as it becomes cheaper and more accessible, that will become some kind of industry, I'm sure, even if almost nobody can afford it. But let's talk about some more daily life. All right. So I do think in the future there'll be autonomous robots. Right now we see humanoid robots in their infancy. I do foresee laws governing what they can and can't do, not getting certain jobs. I can see them being banned from warfare, where real people are targeted. Unless they're also replacing robots. It's just robots fighting each other. There's no real like incentive to ever stop a war, right? Because that might just cause endless wars, potentially. Certain jobs, perhaps working with kids, they may ban that as well. You don't want some AI that's likely to glitch working with kids, so may not want them to influence them or have some kind of glitch, right? So they may be banned from certain jobs, or even stop them from supplanting people entirely, so that there's still enough jobs for humans, not just all robots. So there may be some more restrictions around them as the decade goes on. Same thing with AI. Right now, still, believe it or not, only like a decade or so old. I'm sure it'll get even better as time goes on. I said specialized robots, so I mean like non-humanoid robots, just like you build a robot that's necessarily a humanoid that's gonna perform a function. It's not gonna walk around and say hi like C-3PO or something. It's going to do other things. But I do foresee 3D printing that's currently in development and will help with the medicine and medical industry. If your organs fail, you have 3D printed ones. I'm sure maybe they won't last as long, but it will help people extend their lifespan, which is another thing I think will be down the pipeline. An extended lifespan of some kind for humans whether that be extending telomeres, which are these things on the end of cells that are just extra information. I said cells, I meant DNA. That it's just duplicate information that as you age, it'll get worn down until it gets to your real DNA, and that's when you start aging, having white hair, balding, your joints start aching, and all that kind of fun stuff. So whether it be the extension of telomeres, using nanobots to fight off viruses to some extent, although I'm sure some people will be against that as well. Any kind of cybernetic implants in them. I think there'll be human cloning. We currently clone animals to some extent. There might be the capability of cloning humans. Maybe it just hasn't come out yet. I'm sure it's been done secretly or something. But I'm sure it will certainly be banned. I can't imagine morally that people will allow the cloning of humans, at least not in a legal sense. I'm sure maybe some kind of underground black market will show up where people can just clone themselves or something, but it could potentially be a problem, right? And then another thing that might happen is a post-work future. Basically, if robots aren't banned from just working almost any job, then humans won't really be working. It'll be like a post-working future. And I guess some governments have the idea of instituting like the universal basic income. Not sure if that'll come to pass, but it may be necessary if most people don't work anymore. It'll raise the question of like what humans' purpose will be if they don't work anymore. Like what the heck they're supposed to do, right? So could be a good or bad thing, right? So like I said earlier with the robots part, I do think some kind of restriction will be done. Otherwise, humans will just be purposeless, right? So I do think there'll be different countries from today as well. So some will collapse, some will go to war, some will join, rejoin, make unions, federations. That has become like a popular thing. A lot of countries around the world are considering joining together to make one unified country, or at least a federation of countries. So that may be a thing in the future. The world map will certainly look different 400 years from now than it is today. Yeah, things like gravity manipulation that come down the pipeline. If I can even say the word right. If it's possible to manipulate gravity, increase or decrease it for space travel or living on other planets in the solar system, I do think it'll be invented sometime in the next 20 to 50, if not 100 years from now. So by 2126, I do think if it's possible to manipulate gravity, we'll have that. But I don't think I'll be alive to say for sure, right? So I don't think anybody has a gravity generator in a garage somewhere. But if they did, then I'm sure the government will just hide it, right? So anyway, I'll basically wrap up this video. And in review, we talked about these sea levels. I do think that's not that big of an issue to fix, I don't think. Whether that be stopping glaciers from melting, making cities more resistant to flooding. A combination of both, putting a giant freaking mirror in orbit, which is might be the most unrealistic of the solutions, but it might be a solution to consider. I do think that the desertification will be reversed to some extent. Some countries are working on it to this day, so I don't think that'll be a big problem 400 years into the future, but I think there'll be more deserts in the future than there are now, but I don't think it'll be like the whole world will be a giant desert like Tatooine or something. There'll certainly be less people, maybe 4 to 6 billion people. I think it could reverse if you offer enough incentive for people to have kids, if they get more hopeful about the future. I.e., people actually just leaving the planet, being able to go explore space. Unless the governments do actually force people to have kids or just start cloning people. I don't know if that's not going to work at all. I do think we'll have colonization of other planets, at the very least of the moon, if not just to get the resources from other locations that's not Earth, to fill in the gap, because a lot of resources you have some kind of resource shortfall at some point, whether that be oil or phosphorus or whatever you can think of. That's going to have a shortage, right? So I think we'll have space tourism, gravity manipulation, robots, robotics, things like Li-Fi, which is basically a better version of Wi-Fi that's not as susceptible to electromagnetic interference. I don't know if it's going to be a post-work society or not. I do think humans will have extended lifespans. I'm realizing we're really far to this video, probably my longest video ever. There certainly will be new currencies that'll come about. I'm sure of it. I'm not sure the details. I don't know. Some of them might be digital. Some of them might be backed by actual gold and actual material and resources. So We'll see about that. Perhaps we'll find a new resource to back our currency on in the future. Future countries, new countries, maybe perhaps the countries you know today won't even be there. Some futures like Star Trek imagine a world where there are no more nation states, so basically it's all one giant global government. I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen, but I'm sure by now YouTube will put some kind of fact check little Wikipedia article at the bottom of this video because I mentioned so many different things. I didn't mention something like a hover car, which means that I did mention that in another video, but not in this one, where you don't even need tires anymore. They'll just have the car hover above the ground, and you don't even really need the tire industry anymore, or at the very least, some kind of airless tires that'll come about. But that is it. I could name like 100 other things. I don't think it's that important to mention every little thing, because we're going to be here forever. But I guess with that being said, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys all on the next flight.